What's going on, everyone? Welcome to TLE TV, TLE Radio, TLE News, the Lyrical Elitist. I'm your host, Hassan Labduni. I'm trying to go ahead and shoot out another little quick video. Now, this really isn't a news video per se. It's more of a just a talk. I just wanted to say something real quick. Something that I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks with all the stories that have been going on with the police shootings, police involved shootings of the black people. Majority of the time, these black folks are said to have a history of mental illness, that they suffer from mental illness, whether it's been diagnosed or not. They suffer from mental illness. They have mental illness. They have been mistreated. They have been undertreated with the case of their mental illness. And one thing that really just sticks out a lot in these cases is like I believe I was reading about 93% of these police involved shootings when it comes to police officer and a black individual, whether man or woman. 93% of these cases, the man or a woman, a black man or a woman that is shot by police, whether they died or not, um, excuse me, happens to be mentally ill or is alleged that they're mentally ill. And what's funny is, well, I wouldn't say funny, haha, funny, but what's interesting is that just recently, if you've been watching the news, there's this big husky black man out of Florida. Yeah, I believe it's South Florida, and what he did. He's actually in jail right now because he threatened a politician online on Facebook. He deleted his post, but it was already seen. The politician feared for his life, and rightfully so, because of what's been going on with politicians, especially what happened at the baseball game. A couple of years back with the other politician that survived getting shot in the head. I believe her name's Gifford. I don't remember, but rightfully so, with people making these threats online and so on. The politician that received a threat called police. Police investigated. They arrested a black man. And apparently, this black man had a history of outbursts and targeting politicians and lawmakers. But one of the things that came out in the story was that this guy was mentally ill and he was supposed to be taking medication. He apparently was not on his medication at the time of the incidents that occurred. And even in the courtroom, he was just in the courtroom today having a hearing, and he had an outburst talking about, though, they're torturing his two sons. And he even called out the cameraman and everything. He was not on his meds. He was not on his meds. Now, I do want to go into something about the meds and everything, but I'm gonna save that for another video. I wanted to just talk about the mentally ill perspective of what's going on here. Now, there's been a spike in reports of black people dying at the hands of police, and as each year goes by, it really does seem that the situation is just getting worse and worse and worse. And the police are getting more and more brazen. There's getting less and less accountability. I don't know. Maybe Attorney General Jeff Sessions, before he leaves office, maybe his announcement that police would not be held accountable for their actions, i.e., federal government, DOJ, would not step in and investigate and retrain and so on, and police to police, nor tell them how to do their jobs. Maybe that emboldened these officers to go ahead and ramp up their law and order practices. Now, as I mentioned before, with the whole case of the mentally ill, this is that one startling factor in all these cases is that the majority of these black individuals that have these run-ins with the police have mental illness, and it's been repeated so many times. It's almost automatic now that you hear a police shooting, you expect a follow up with an allegation of the victim of the police abuse being challenged mentally, having a mental illness. You expect it. It's almost like it's almost hand in hand, almost. And in nearly every single instance, from Terrence Crutcher to Charlene Lyles, from Alfred Alongo in San Diego to Joshua Barr in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the victors suffered some form of mental illness. What we need to do in this community is we need to address the mental illness that we have in our community. And I wanted to go ahead and say I don't remember if I said it at the very beginning, but I do want to say this now, is that all black people, in particular all African Americans, suffer from mental illness at some form or another, to some degree, to some extent or another. all African Americans suffer from mental illness, and I will tell you why later. I'm gonna come back to that. Now, what I want to talk about, what I want to address right now, is addressing the mental illness within our community. Now, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI for short, breaks down how mental health affects the African American community, stating that African Americans sometimes experience more severe forms of mental health conditions due to unmet needs and other barriers. Now, according to the Health and Human Service Office of Minority Health, African Americans are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems than the general population. Common mental health disorders among African Americans include major depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, suicide among young African American men, PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, because African Americans are more likely to be victims of violent crime. Now, African Americans are also more likely to experience certain factors that increase the risk for developing a mental health condition. Homelessness. People experiencing homelessness are at a greater risk of developing a mental health condition, and African Americans make up 40% of the homeless population. Go figure. Now, exposure to violence increases the risk of developing a mental health condition such as depression, anxiety, and post traumatic stress disorder. African American children are more likely to be exposed to violence than other children. Go figure. Now, with case after case of police-involved killings of black people, the deceased reportedly had some form of mental illness that often went untreated or inadequately treated. Well, we in the community need to go ahead and start addressing these needs. Maybe we need to go ahead and start taking down the list of everyone in our community and start addressing their mental health needs. Maybe we need to put some kind of plan or project together to do something to help meet these mental health needs of the people in the community so they're not out there acting a fool. They're not out there putting their own self in danger because they're mentally challenged. And because of that mental challenge, it's not that they deserve to die, but the police are inadequately trained to deal with someone with a mental illness. And I was actually reading that people with mental illness are 5 times more likely to be killed by police than the rest of the population. 5 times more likely. So now you add that to being African American, so you're African American and you're mentally ill, you're guaranteed a death sentence if you run into police, pretty much. I mean, based upon the current track record, right? Now, anyway, like I said before, I said that African Americans suffer from mental illness. All black people suffer from mental illness in some form or another, to some extent, to some degree or another. And I say this because, check this out. African Americans. We as African Americans have no real identity. We have no sense of self. We have no sense of root. We have no root. What we have is what was planted here in the United States of America when we came to the 13 original colonies and so on, and slavery began. That is what we have. We have identity. We have their names that they've given us. We have their holidays that they've given us. We have their religion that they've given us. We have their history that they've given us while they've taken everything from us. We've been stripped clean. Now we have to be increasingly mentally sick to just accept and embrace everything that they tell us and not have any sense of our own, any sense of self, any identity of our own. We take the identity that they give us. And if you look at the majority of the urban population, you see the identity that's given to them on the media and music and on TV. That's the identity that they buy into. That is the identity that they embrace. And that is what continues to breed in these inner city communities. That's what continues to breed with these children out of wedlock, with these single mothers and so on and so forth. That is what's continuing to be bred over and over and over. They put the image out there, and parents, whether it's single parents or a two-parent home where the workload is too much, where both parents have to leave, both parents can't be home to properly raise a child, so they leave the child in the hands of the government and the system of the public, and what is being fed to them, negative imagery of themselves. Negative imagery of themselves while they see positive imagery of other people. Black people are mentally sick, and no matter how far you go trying to deprogram what was instilled into you. You have a genetic mental illness that's been passed down and is being passed down over and over. But as we continue to deprogram ourselves from what was going on, as we continue to deprogram, oh, looks like my light went out. Yep, looks like my light went out. So I'm gonna have to make this quick. But as we continue to deprogram, the less and less of it is being transferred on to the next generation. Now, as I mentioned before, there's just a lot of uh, instances with police and black people, and I actually want to show you that there is no shortage of this. There is no shortage of this. You can find it anywhere, everywhere. You can just go into YouTube, like I did here. You'll see in YouTube. Let's see. Come on now. There we go. And I went into YouTube and I cop shoots mentally ill, and here you go. And when you say mentally ill, you think you show us maybe a couple other people. No, you see top 5 is already black, and it just keeps going. Oh, wrong way. My bad. Here we. This it. I'm learning a new system here. Trying to get it to scroll. Nope. I wonder. Alright, here we go. Alright, so we got Dallas police shoot mentally ill man on his porch. Yeah, body cam footage. Number 2, Dallas police, Los Angeles. Michael Blair shot by police in Fort Benton County. And we have another one here. Why? And here you have a video. Why police shoot the mentally ill? Why? Because it's a culling. If you looked at what Hitler did in Germany, the mentally ill, the handicapped, the special needs, oh, they got rid of them. They were a weight on society. So they just got rid of that weight on society. But look at that. You just keep going. You keep going. You keep going. Keep going, and there's multiple pages. There's no shortage of this. You can find it anywhere and everywhere you go. There's no shortage of it at all. So, needless to say, we black people. I'm actually gonna go more in depth in another video as far as why. I gave you one reason. I'm gonna give you several more in another video, but I just wanted to start off with this. I wanted to get this out there because it's something that's been on my mind, something I've been thinking about, and hopefully, we can make it happen. So anyway, I'm your host Hassan Ladumi, aka CVB. Just check me out and stay tuned for more. Have a good night.